Hello and welcome to Deep in Pact, a proud member of the Duff Network where we dive deep into Wildbow's most tattooed work 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
And that was Ruben Morehouse.
And we are back with Blake and his team in the middle of his apartment, and he's kind of recapping the revelation that Fel just delivered to him last chapter, that he's basically shit out of luck for allies other than everyone in this room.
Yeah, like, a big part of his plan was counting on being able to get others on side who hated Conquest, and Fel just took that away. So he's now created a game with rigged odds and lost his secret advantage, so he's pretty fucked.
Yes. The thing I like about this, or that's interesting to me about this, is he says to Blake, Blake says to Fel, "You knew all this and you still sided with me?" And Fel's like, "I mean, I had to." It really drives home that Blake really kind of thinks that his slim chance has evaporated.
Oh, and it's not just that. I think and Fel kind of sort of mentions this, Fel's pretty fucking desperate too. Like, obviously, Blake's concerned with his own shit odds at survival, whereas from Fel's perspective, this is almost a chance to die, if nothing else, Like, this is another one of his little risks, but yeah, exactly. It's like, regardless of how slim the chances are, like, Fel's just so desperate, he'll say yes anyway, yeah.
I wonder if it comes to it and it looks like Blake is going to lose, if Fel will, like, off himself, or I don't know.
Like, Fel would obviously give his life to end Conquest, so I have no...
Oh, yeah.
I have no hesitations about stating that, but it's whether or not that opportunity would come up, really.
Yeah. Another interesting thing that happens at the start of this chapter is Blake is kind of looking around his apartment and seeing that everything is kind of out of time. Things have either aged or kind of gone back in time, or just kind of off in weird ways because they're in the spirit world.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit last episode, but there's way more cool things in this one as well. Like, there's I like how things have been rearranged in like drawers so that the things Blake uses less and cares about less are at the bottom. Like, that's such a neat little touch. I love it, and I wonder if it's something that'll. Obviously, we're having this big battle in the spirit world, and our attention's been drawn to the odd ways things work here. I wonder if this will start to become a tactical factor in some confrontations.
Yes, we shall see, I suppose. So, basically, at the end of last chapter, Blake needed a bit of a timeout and basically put everyone's questions on ice, and now he basically goes around answering all the lingering questions, complaints that his circle had at the end of last chapter.
Yeah, so everyone get in line and get comfortable. This will probably be a while.
Yes,
there's a lot.
But Blake chooses first to answer Evan, and tries to convince Evan that he took the hyena as one of his champions for a good reason, and and we dive into something that's going to become pretty important this chapter, where Rose right away is not on Blake's side here.
That's putting it lightly.
So Rose kind of says to Evan, "Hey," Blake makes Evan an offer like, "Oh, Evan, I promise I won't use the hyena without consulting you first," or whatever. And Rose says, "Blake made me a similar offer before, a few times really, promised to take my counsel. To give me a chance to offer my input, to decide before he went ahead with anything big. Do you know how many times he's actually followed through?" Fair. It's fair. I mean, we've picked on Blake for the exact same thing.
Yeah. Like, sort of hearing this at this point, like, as they're essentially trying to get ready to deal with this plan, I was really torn between now is not the time, Rose, but also good point, Rose. Like, yeah, it's tough because she's right. Like, Blake sort of makes these offers and then kind of bullies you into having to see things his way anyway when push comes to shove. Or ends up in situations where you don't really get to have a choice because he's already jumped in and now needs it. So I don't know how useful it is for Rose to start descent in the ranks, so to speak, here and now, but she does have a point as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's called Blake out on a number of times, and it just keeps happening, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll dive into the specific, most recent instance when they bring it up later in the chapter. I want to point out, they kind of have a little bit of a verbal spar And Blake says, "That's not fair," I said. "I agree," Rose said. "It isn't fair. You got a familiar, you got your circle thing." I just like Rose is very quick on turning around in the verbal sparring here. She's very much good at the linguistics side of it.
Yeah, it's a neat little burn.
So they have a bit of a verbal spar, and then Rose kind of disappears to get books and kind of prep for the fight. Blake is clearly wants to get in the last word, but she's already gone.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, she just fucking lays into him in this little section, and then yeah, just sort of bails. But like this section to me is kind of defined by Blake coming up with these sort of small defenses, and like Rose just using those to launch into like other attacks. Like every time you sort of like, oh, well, you know, I'm more the Thorburn, and she's just like, "Well, are you? Like, let me lay down the law." And she just schools him, and then the first time he sort of gets an opportunity to really say anything, she's just fucking gone. It's pretty. Yeah, things aren't great between them right now.
Yeah, and we will get into it more. I think it's, I don't know. She just kind of, you're right. She lays down the law. She really delivers a bit of a smackdown.
I think like the last thing sort of to talk about in this planning sectiony bit is Blake's plan is to split up, which, you know, classic strong horror movie maneuver. Well, what could go wrong? But like the crux of the splitting up idea is also to use Rose as a communication method between the groups. Does she? I mean, last time we checked, it was the house, and it was very close to Blake that she could teleport. Yeah. Like, when did she get this? Is it because they're in the spirit world, or is it because of like the power up he gave her in the police station?
Yeah, I suspect the spirit world, obviously, because you know, when they left Conquest's tower, we didn't touch on this, I don't think, but at the end of last chapter, there was a few lines where Rose kind of held herself together more than she was able to normally. And Blake surmised, oh, she's stronger in the spirit world. It's closer to her mirror dimension than the real world is. So, yeah, I can see that happening. You're right that we haven't got like any explicit confirmation of just what she can do now.
Yeah, that line did sort of jump into my head as well, but I guess I wasn't sure what to make of it. But I don't know. I guess that wasn't the clearest connection for me, but it does sort of make sense. So I'll go with the whole spirit world. Lets Rose be more freedom, but I mean, I hope Blake's right about that. We don't want them splitting up and then just figuring out they can't communicate.
Yeah, especially since Blake doesn't have a phone, right? So the other thing that I want to point out is Fell is kind of talking about Conquest dominating Rose, in air quotes, when he had her captive. And I think it seems pretty clear that this is in the, he got information out of her sense. He didn't, on my read at least, there wasn't any kind of sexual abuse stuff in there, but Blake's mind definitely goes there, and I think that's interesting because I think that's the stuff that haunts him, right?
Yeah, and it's sort of preparing us to deal with that a bit more later in the chapter.
We'll see. Yeah, I guess.
I agree. Fell seems to imply that there wasn't anything physical or really sexual to it. It was very much just it's just traumatic, kind of being dominated so completely, even mentally.
So next in line is Blake explaining to Ty, Tiff, and Alexis why he didn't choose them as champions. And I think they kind of get it right away. They've been in the world long enough that they're like, I'm quite glad that we're able to be kept out of this to some extent.
Yeah, but like, I mean, the obvious question they've sort of been asking since last chapter is, like, why did you awaken us? Like I think you're right that they sort of get why they're not champions, and they're probably glad that they're not champions. But there's also that thing of like, what the fuck are we doing here? And he sort of gives them this quick little answer about, you're gonna make safe zones for us or whatever. But that very much feels like a post facto thing. Really, it has more to do with having them around charges him, so they're basically like power outlets, mostly.
Yeah, I definitely think he kind of spur of the moment is like, oh, what's a thing they can do that is not too involved but is still helpful.
Which is like a classic Blake maneuver to like come up with the motivations behind your action after having finished it. But I don't know. It's interesting. They still seem to be on Team Blake, and Alexis is sort of like, oh, I still trust you. Let's try and keep it that way. But I think
Yeah.
it'd be fair if, even if it's just deep down, they're starting to have their doubts because he's drawn them into some pretty high stakes, heinous shit, and it's pretty clear he didn't really know what he was doing when he did it.
Yes, he definitely
Yeah,
didn't seem to have a specific plan for them in mind, which is kind of shitty. I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah. I would say so.
I think he really just the overarching thing was I need allies, and yeah, they're not really going to
Mm.
be able to help, but who knows.
Yeah,
The Knights take this opportunity to bounce, basically being like Nick's
smart.
like, look, we're not gonna get more involved than we already have been. We told you we wouldn't, and we're not going to. And Blake's like, yep, all right.
Yeah, I think he's pretty reasonable here. It's like, he lets them go, like he's not going to hold them against their will, but it still like upsets him, which I think is fair because losing people when your life is on the line, yeah, like it would be upsetting.
Yeah, yeah, but I think there is a point to be made that Conquest already knows that they're helping him, right? Like they're already kind of labeled as Team Blake, regardless. I
Mm,
don't know.
mm. No, I agree. Like that's my concern is that they're fucked already. Might be in their interest to stick around anyway, but I
Yeah,
guess we'll see. They might be back as some sort of bait who are being forced to act against Blake in some way, shape, or form. I guess we'll see.
yeah. So Blake has kind of answered for his crimes, I suppose, and the group is ready to head out before their 1 hour of prep time is up. But Blake kind of taps Fell to make a bit of a play here. He makes a distraction. He makes a chair Blake that will kind of confuse people that come looking for Blake at the apartment.
Yes, a chaircrow, if you will.
I will, yes, I will. Yeah, the thing that I like about the Chaircrow is Blake is kind of shocked at seeing himself, seeing how shitty he
Mm.
looks, which is fair because he doesn't have a reflection. But he actually for the first time sees himself and thinks, "Oh, this is what I looked like while I was homeless." It's not a good sign.
Yeah, like I think the fact that Blake gets an opportunity to see himself is the real reason that this was included in the chapter. Like it's worked
Yeah,
in really well, but as you already pointed out, he doesn't have a reflection, and this is a rare opportunity for him to get a look at himself in the mirror, basically.
yeah, yeah. Blake even says, "Oh, is that what I look like?" And everyone's like, "Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
pretty much."
yeah. It's this real oh shit moment for him, and everyone else is like, oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
But like we already heard from Pris a couple of chapters ago that he kind of invoked her idea of what a Diabolus would look like,
Mm.
and we sort of see it now. Like he's not just pale and drained, like and injured. Like we sort of he's been very aware of all that, obviously, as he's been looking at his hands and stuff. But now he's seeing like how stubbly his face is and just how like disheveled and disorganized he
Yeah.
looks. And I mean that's
Yeah.
something that he's placed a lot of value on
Yeah.
a number of times in the story. So like it's quite harrowing for him to see,
Just
himself
how shabby he looks. Yeah.
when and looking as bad as he did when he was homeless, which is something he tries to
Yeah.
avoid doing.
Yeah. You're right. That's probably. I mean, being homeless in and of itself wasn't a low light of his life, but there are things that happen then that definitely are. Places he doesn't want to revisit.
It's all symbolic in his memory, like dressing himself up is really what makes Blake feel like that is behind him, and so to see
Mm.
himself back in that sort of state is not something he enjoys.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to pull out here is they set a booby trap on this if someone comes poking around Chair Blake. Sorry, the Chaircrow. Laird makes it that you're kind of snared unless you're carrying around this microwave from his apartment, which is such a bizarre trap. And I really hope that Laird falls for it and he just has to lug around a microwave.
It's such a fun idea for
It's
like
the
a thing,
funniest fucking trap.
especially because it feels kind of outplaced with how high these stakes are.
Yeah.
It's funny that your first thought went to lead falling for this because for me it just feels like a Duncan, a Duncan type thing. Like Duncan's the sort of person I'm expecting to show up in 2 chapters with a microwave under his arm, and I'll just be like, Duncan, you idiot.
Duncan, you dumb fuck. You fell for the most obvious microwave trap in the book.
Oh, and especially, let's be honest, Duncan's going to be on the front lines. Like, Conquest is going to send Laird, and Laird's going to send Duncan.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to pull up one last line before we put aside the Chaircrow. Blake is thinking, Leave the creepy Blake doppelganger alone. Don't think too hard about why it bothers you so much. And sorry, Blake, but it's our job to think too hard about these things. I'm curious what you think it is about this that bothers Blake so much.
Yeah, yeah. So I've sort of already touched on this a little bit. Like, I think it has to do, well, as far as I can tell, it seems to mostly have to do with, reminding him of the worst points in his life, like seeing himself looking like that again. I mean, with how much attention is drawn to this line, maybe there's a bit more to it, but like nothing I can think of. Like, maybe it's one of those lines that'll, be foreshadowing or something in retrospect.
It doesn't feel like the being disheveled thing is enough to me. I get that, and my head kind of went to the same place, but that's never been something that Blake is like trying to keep under the surface, Like he's kind of been open about how he likes to maintain his routine and how he likes kind of being himself and how that's important to him. And so I think this, I don't know, it could be it, but it doesn't feel like the kind of thing that he's trying to avoid thinking about.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I definitely think that that's part of it, but I agree that there's this feeling that there's more to this, and like I drew such a blank trying to think of what the more could be that I'm thinking it's foreshadowing something.
Yeah. So everybody kind of starts heading out, but before Blake leaves, he kind of decides to hash out some stuff with Rose, and they basically speak about what's going on and how not okay they are at the moment.
Yeah, they finally get to have that private chat Blake's been wanting since last chapter. Oh boy.
So obviously Rose is annoyed at Blake consistently kind of breaking his promises to her, and consistently taking very drastic actions without consulting her. So obviously he made Evan his familiar, and that was she kind of was okay with it after the fact, but obviously wasn't happy with it. With the drasticness of that choice, and then kind of Blake flew this in her face by doing basically the exact same thing and awakening a few friends to be part of his cabal. I think something else that she points out that's very on point is Blake is very much about righting the balance, always making an effort to pay everybody back, but he never seems to do this with Rose, which is a totally fair point.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Like Blake isn't even confident in saying that he's always tried to be honest with Rose, so he settles for the word straightforward instead, which is less committal, I guess. But one thing that stood out to me, Rose points out this is the third major time that he's undercut her and made one of these big decisions without her. And obviously recruiting Evan as the familiar and then recruiting the Cabal are two of them, but nothing's really jumping out to me as to what the third big one is. Like, am I forgetting something that happened before Arc 4, or...
Man, honestly, I feel like there are so many that it could be, right?
Yeah, like that's the thing. I think there are a lot of little ones, but nothing's jumping out to me as the big third betrayal of Rose's, niceness.
I'm sure we'll have somebody leave what they think it is in the comments.
Yeah, please do if you have ideas.
In our discussion thread. Yeah, you're right. I can't think of what the third one is. Maybe fighting the Erasure Demon was like a bit of a, undercutting her decision kind of thing, but it doesn't quite feel right.
Yeah, well, and the records of that conversation are so sketchy. We definitely came down very anti-Blake, so it could be that might be fair, yeah.
So the other thing about this is they both kind of express this sentiment, or they kind of hint at this sentiment. They don't fully land on it, where they both feel like they're kind of trying to fight against destiny by trying to be friends, when it kind of feels like they're meant to be enemies. I'm kind of reminded of the idea of karma keeping two people together, kind of tying a bond between people, where the bond between Blake and Rose kind of trends towards them being enemies with each other, and they're constantly trying to fight it. And I think it's Rose who kind of suggests, like, well, should we?
Yeah, and obviously I've gone off on tangents before about how maybe Rose was specifically created for this sort of thing. And blah blah blah. But I think the real bit here is like underneath all this is we have the knowledge from Fell's interlude that it seems like Rose isn't as dependent on Blake as we think. Like, really, one of the big reasons that they've given up until now for not just becoming enemies is kind of that they're stuck with each other. And, when that goes away, that's when things have the potential to start to get really dirty between the two of them.
I'm kind of worried. I mean, Fell knows that, right? And now he's going to be hanging out with them for the next arc, at least. That's something to worry about.
There's so much that can go wrong here, yeah.
Rose reveals to Blake that she told Conquest everything. What they were planning, which we already knew, but also Blake's weaknesses, their weaknesses as a team, and Rose even kind of went into fan theories, theorizing about Blake's trauma, ways to kind of fuck with him, basically anything that she could. And I definitely got the sense, at least, that this was a bit of a, once she gave in, the kind of tap was turned and all of her resentment just kind of manifested.
Yeah, like the revelation for us as readers here is that she went way further than just detailing the plan, but she specifically started to dish on Blake's weaknesses that Conquest may or may not have already known about. And I think Blake handles this about as well as you can really expect.
He does okay.
This is obviously a big trigger subject for him, and he's flooded with emotions, which you'd expect. And he manages to recognize that some of the anger he's directing towards Rose is kind of unfair given the situation she was in, and that doesn't make that anger go away, of course, but being self-aware enough to identify when you're feeling somewhat unjustified anger towards a messenger or something is a good sign, I think. So I think he handles it pretty well overall.
It's interesting to me because I get that it's a betrayal, but it doesn't feel like she really, from what we heard, told Conquest anything that he didn't already know, or that he at least couldn't already kind of guess. Blake is a bit of an open book about his trauma when it comes up. For example, the scene when Conquest wanted to chain Blake up, it was pretty clear that caused Blake to freak out, right? Or in the interview scene with Duncan, it was very much like, oh, he doesn't like being touched. And so I think you can kind of put those pieces together.
I don't think Rose was necessarily the only way he was going to get that information. But I mean, Blake, as he sort of calms down and tries to process what he's feeling, comes up with this idea that one of the things he's most angry at Rose for is potentially not telling him. She really hesitates to tell him that she said this. And that's kind of what really ticks him off, is that she might have let him go in unknowing that Conquest would have stuff ready for this, which I do think is a little unfair, because obviously obviously she's going to be hesitant to be like, hey, all your worst nightmares, I told them about those. I don't know. I can kind of land either side of it. I don't think that it isn't like Blake kind of has to extract it from her. She does kind of jump onto telling him about it when they get the chance. She does. That's the thing. She does try. So I agree. But I think that's what makes the overall Blake and Rose relationship and these scenes work so well, is just that grayness to it and the believability. They are just both really struggling in this intense situation, and they're both trying to be as fair as they can with all these emotions and high stakes flying around. It's great. Yeah. I it does. I am kind of worried that this means Conquest is specifically going to break Blake in all the ways he's afraid of now. But me too.
We'll see, I suppose. So now Blake and Rose equally are angry at each other, and they kind of head out. Blake gets on his bike with Tiffany and Evan, and the rest kind of jump into Fell's car, and they all drive to find a safe house.
Yeah, and the moments where Blake is just sort of standing there fuming and organizing himself before heading downstairs are really powerfully and well written. I really liked that. Yeah. I think the last thing Blake sort of thinks here is he takes this kind of cynical outlook, as you sort of said, where thinking, oh, well, now Rose has betrayed me too, so we're kind of a bit more even, and and hopefully that's good enough, which I think is a very cynical outlook, but then also I think he's probably a little bit right. He knows himself, so he knows a fair bit about Rose, and I think I don't know. Like it to me, maybe this is just me. Like, but I'm the sort of person where I think if I was in Rose's shoes, it would actually just help me just a little. And maybe I'm a
Yeah.
terrible person, but so are Blake and Rose, I guess.
I don't think it's cynicism. I do think it is self-awareness. Can you call it self-awareness? Yeah. Anyway, I think you're right that Rose is kind of happy that she's kind of got a bit of a... She's managed to piss off Blake in the way that he pisses her off all the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just funny because he never actually like they never clarify this or anything. He never actually asks her. He just kind of lets it go unsaid, probably because it helps him to think that this will make her more on his side than not.
So Tiffany, Blake, and Evan are all on Blake's bike, and a fun note is it kind of makes sense afterwards. But I was kind of surprised because Tiffany isn't holding on to him while they ride. Blake has told her, no, you can't hold on to me because of his personal space issues. So she has to lean back and hold on to the back of the bike, which is like the most terrifying and dangerous way to ride a bike. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a nuts visual. And it's like, it works so well because when Blake first brings up the bike, Alexis kind of jokes about how riding with him is suicidal. And at first I was just like, oh, so what, he's like a reckless, crazy driver or whatever, but I wasn't really sure because that didn't seem too much like Blake. And then we see this and you're like, oh, that's why this is suicidal.
Yeah, it seems so dangerous.
Blake has all this stuff where he's like, Tiffany had wanted to avoid being cramped in the car, but I wonder if she's regretting that now.
Yeah, I would, yeah.
Yeah, like it's such a crazy system. I mean, I get it because it's arguably even worse to have her hugging Blake and then him driving while on the verge of a panic attack. So
yeah,
it might still be for the best, but it's it'd be intense for Tiffany.
Yes, for sure.
I wanted to pull out one other line as well. So there's this little paragraph where he's describing Evan's situation on the bike. So it says, Evan, for his part, was tucked into the V where my coat's zipper parted at the collarbone. He periodically screamed something that might have been spelled a few dozen letter A's, lost in the rush of wind and noise of my bike. He periodically laughed, a noise that was easier to make out. So first of all, that's like adorable as fuck.
Yes, Evan is very adorable.
Like we saw Evan get really excited for the bike, and now he's getting to ride it and he's loving it. But this is like a written book, so like Wildbow could have just written 12 A's, but I love that he does that little detail of just saying it's something that could have been spelt with 12 A's. Like it fits into the concept of like Blake's narration so well, and it's just a nice little touch. I don't know why I like it so much, but I really do. Yeah,
it just kind of gets you in the mindset a bit more, right? You're not clinically digesting events sentence by sentence as they happen. You're kind of interfacing with characters, and you're engaging in an actual person's brain.
Yeah, it's nice. It's very much Blake's perspective. There's also one other tidbit from this a little car scene that I really want to call out, which is Blake keeps mentioning how quickly he's going, and like there's a number of times where he mentions that they're leaving the other car behind, and that's Fell's car, and Fell's driving that, and he's not usually one to get left behind. So I've just headcanoned that Fell's not reckless driving, and he was maybe even going too far the other way. But I like this idea that suddenly Fell has something to lose, and so he's not driving as recklessly as he normally does. Yeah, it's a great bit. I didn't even notice it when I read through it, so I'm glad you pulled it out. Fell finally has a reason to obey the speed limit. Unfortunately, they won't be safe for long because the contest has officially kicked off, and the Cabal are set upon by the Shepherd's ghosts, first of all. He kind of slams into their cars with ghosts and ghost cars, and then the Eye also makes an appearance, basically just fucking up traffic for a while. Yeah, I don't think I completely understood what the Eye did here. It came out and it was like throwing cars, but they're like portals to the real world. So, like, was it using telekinesis through the portals? Was it bringing the cars into spirit? I just didn't, even on the second read through reading this carefully, I don't think I understood what happened. Yeah. My interpretation of it is basically the Eye causing car crashes and cars to have crazy accidents just by fucking with, like, mechanics and shit, like the mechanics of the cars, but it does feel very like otherworldly, I suppose. Well, there's just a specific bit where Blake points out that the Eye does something and there's like this Aurora Borealis type effect and then he's seeing bits of the real world, and there's like a few moments where he mentions those lights are happening, and I think
Yeah.
maybe that's what's confusing me. But I didn't really understand this bit. Again, if somebody in the comments wants to actually explain to me what the eye did, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, fair. Again, dive into the comments for that. So the thing I like about this is the eye is causing this crazy car accident and basically killing and injuring random people just to fuck with Blake. Like, just because he knows that Blake is going to either try and be a hero or just kind of get emotionally affected by this. It's a real fucking play.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were good choices from Conquest, and that's for
I guess.
sure.
And now, what, Alexis and Tiffany, do your thing. And so the eye basically just kind of fucks shit up. Basically is... It actually kind of gives me this vibe of the eye kind of radiating chaos, giving me like Poe's radiation vibes, where he just kind of fucks shit up around him.
Yeah, like there's this bit where the eye touches this car to blow it up just as Blake's getting close. And Blake sort of mentions the gutted underbelly of the car had leaked gas against all odds, and the eye had ignited it. And it's just like, yet again, Pact has found a way to bring in a great story trope, which is exploding cars, and make it make sense despite physics. It's fantastic.
Yep, a classic. And that's the end of the chapter. Blake kind of standing in the street, watching people die because of him.
Yeah, and the eye is making its way towards him.
Yeah.
And yeah, so as you said, that's the end of the chapter, and man, things are looking pretty bad for Team Blake right now.
Yeah.
Like we talked about how chapter 6.1 was all about showing us how Blake had these people who genuinely were on his side and liked him, and Conquest didn't have any genuine allies. And I feel like this chapter was basically just all built around actually letting us know that that was a crock of shit, and now Blake is committed to a plan that was based on this, and now he's screwed because he's sort of alienated a lot of the people who are around him with some of his recent choices, and also misjudged how far some of those people are willing to go to help him out.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that Conquest sure doesn't have genuine friendly allies, but he has allies who will fight for him, and they're much stronger than your genuine allies, Blake. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, and Blake's genuine allies aren't too hot on him right now.
Yeah, he really has alienated a lot of his cabal. Anyway, that's 6.5. Now, I guess let's give a quick reminder of our discussion question, which I think we're going to get to next episode. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, that'll be on Friday. Yep.
And that discussion question is: if you had to give someone a crash course on practitioning in 15 minutes, what topics would you focus on? We've already got a few interesting answers to this. Actually, while we're here, I wanted to call out the interesting part about this question to me is you have to give a crash course in only 15 minutes. So I am curious. A number of answers have talked about what they would show. I'm curious to hear what things people would have to leave out as part of this.
Yeah. Because as we sort of mentioned when we first brought up the question, there was a lot of talk of familiars, implements, and domains, and was that worth discussing? So as much as what you think is more important, what are some things that are maybe important but you think aren't top 15 minutes level important?
They can wait until after the Conquest contest.
Yeah.
Before we leave, I want to pull out one comment that we got in our discussion thread last episode as well that I really liked by a user called Mad Vaughn, who pointed out, we were talking last episode about how Blake not having a phone felt really weird, and so Mad Vaughn went back and looked and pulled out this quote from chapter 1.2 where it's confirmed that Blake actually does have a phone. So this is from when Blake has to run away from the bird skull zombie things, and Rose says, "You cannot leave me here." There was a note of hysteria in her voice. I pulled out my cell phone, an older model I could slide open to get at the keyboard. The screen was scuffed badly, and there's a little bit of stuff about the phone there. So, confirmed, Blake's phone got eaten by the Erasure Demon at some point, and just, we didn't know about it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you wanted to get really technical, this passage maybe shouldn't exist, but it's nice to see that he did have it, and maybe there are limits on the Erasure Demon's powers, but it's, and again, because it's an old flippy phone, like we sort of get confirmation that was why he had to borrow Fell's phone to look up Evan's details, because it doesn't sound like he had a phone that had a web browser.
It's worth noting this is one of those phones that you slide open and has a keyboard on it, like a little mini phone keyboard. So that's fun. I think that definitely means it wouldn't be able to, like, whatever, look up local kid deaths or whatever Blake was Googling to find Evan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just want to call that out because it's a fun little confirmation of a. I think Madvoin also pointed out this is something that he really likes about Pact. We talked about how, due to the format, we kind of had to reveal the things with like the halogen lights and the three goblins that Blake had, and how because of the format, some stuff had to be made obvious. But it's nice that there are also these little hidden things that you can just kind of ruminate on and that aren't kind of spelled out. They're just you see this on your third or fourth reread, I guess.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's what's so impressive about Pact so far is even now. Like, I don't think we're even halfway through the story, and I've already been amazed at the amount of like foreshadowing or things that add up when you go way back. And I mean, this is serialized. Wildbow does always have the option to go and tweak things if he really needs to. But I mean, I've been following Ward as it's been coming out, and I haven't seen him need to do it in that, and there's been similar moments in that as well. So I think he is just a brilliant planner, and it works so well.
Yeah, it's nice. I think the right way to go about it is you just kind of leave in these little seeds of this could turn into a foreshadowing thing later, and then you pick at the right seeds that are going to turn into a fun little development, and it all kind of ties back together thematically. I mean, people don't remember all the notes of, hey, this could be foreshadowing, but then never actually is, right?
Yeah, that's true. And we've sort of touched on this before, but this is what I love about these long stories is you get more room to include, like, I mean, red herrings doesn't feel like quite the right word, but like there's you get the ability to add
threads,
so much.
I would say.
Yeah, there's so much flavor going on that not everything's super important, which means it's a little bit harder to just instantly predict exactly where things are going and that sort of thing, which is way more fun, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you. Speaking of fun, that's all the fun that we have for this episode. Our next episode, talking about chapter 6.6, will be coming out on Friday the 10th, in just a few days.
Yes, and so as we've already said, that's when the discussion question answers will they'll need to be in this one's before that episode comes out. So we can
make sure
them.
You leave your answers in the discussion thread, which will be linked in the show notes down below, as well as to the other things that we mentioned during this chapter, which I've forgotten what they are.
One of them was the third moment, Rose.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yep.
Where he undercut Rose, and what exactly the eye did to those cars, because I still don't understand it.
What we think was going through Blake's head, why he was so upset about the Chaircrow.
Man, we're asking a lot of the audience this episode, aren't we?
Well, it's a community effort, all right? It's a community reread.
Speaking of community, Doof Media has a great community on our Discord. So if you head over to patreon.com/doofmedia, one of the best perks, in my opinion, of donating is getting to join the Doof Discord and join our little community of rambling about all sorts of media and other things too.
It's not just Ward and Pact and all that stuff. There's Endgame spoilers and Game of Thrones spoilers and all kinds of different channels. We just opened up a tech channel talking about tech news, which is fun for all of us nerds here. All of you nerds. Damn it. Anyway, for more information about the Doof Network, you can head to doofmedia.com. All the other great shows that are on there, including a new episode of We've Got Ward, which I think has just come out right now. Is that correct?
I think we're maybe a few hours ahead of them, or behind them. It'll depend exactly where we get this out, I guess. But right about the same time this comes out, you'll also have access to the latest We've Got Ward.
Almost certainly by the time you're hearing this part of the episode, their episode will be out too. So go check it out.
The longer we drag out this bit, the more high the probability is that it's already out.
Yeah, so we just have to talk really slowly. And while you're checking things out online, why not go over to Wildbow's Patreon? I actually just upped my pledge to Wildbow very recently, and I suggest you all do the same, because Wildbow makes some really great stuff, and we're all very grateful to him. The best way to show your gratefulness is to give him money for the job that he does, so do it.
Yeah, absolutely. He does so much writing and interacting with the community, and He deserves every reward he can get for it.
Yeah, totally. And that's the end of our episode, I suppose. So we'll see you for 6.6 on Friday the 10th.
See ya.